Welcome, my listeners, and let me take you to a place unlike any you've heard of before. It's a story that begins on the outskirts of the ancient city of Fez, Morocco, where a young traveler named Ahmed arrived one fateful evening. The air was warm, the night was still, and the stars above gleamed like distant secrets. But little did Ahmed know, the guest house he had chosen would be the beginning of an adventure that would haunt him forever. This guest house, though small, stood at the edge of something much older, an ancient fortress whose crumbling stones seemed to whisper of forgotten times. Its walls groaned with history, secrets long buried beneath the weight of the years. The building was far from ordinary, and Ahmed could sense it the moment he walked through the door. It wasn't just the ancient stone or the rustic furniture that gave the place its eerie charm. No, there was something else, something hidden, just beneath the surface. On his first night, tired from his journey and eager to rest, Ahmed climbed into the bed of his small room. The room itself was simple, just a bed, a dresser, and an old wooden chair by the window. But as the hours passed and the moon hung high in the sky, sleep refused to come. The wind outside howled through the cracks in the walls, carrying with it an unsettling silence that pressed down on him. Suddenly he heard it, a soft sound. At first he thought it was just the wind, but then it happened again, a quiet click followed by the faint sound of footsteps, deliberate, slow, as though someone were walking through the halls. But Ahmed was alone. He was certain of that. He held his breath, listening intently. The footsteps continued, as though the unseen figure were pacing, moving from one room to another. He waited, but as quickly as they had started, they stopped. Ahmed sat up, his heart pounding. Was it his imagination? He had been traveling for days. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on him. But no, the sounds were too clear, too real. The uncertainty gnawed at him, and sleep became impossible. This wasn't just any ordinary guest house. There was something strange, something otherworldly about the place. And little did Ahmed know, his curiosity had just begun to pull him into a world far darker than he could ever have imagined. And that, my friends, is where our story truly begins. As the days passed, Ahmed couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the guest house. The strange sounds continued every night, growing louder, more persistent, like an invisible presence walking just out of sight. At first he tried to convince himself it was just the old building settling or the wind playing tricks on his mind, but deep down, he knew something wasn't right. The silence during the day only made it worse. When the sun was high, the guest house seemed peaceful, even charming. But when night fell, it transformed. The atmosphere thickened, and a strange heaviness hung in the air. Ahmed began to dread the nights. His curiosity, though, pushed him forward. There was something that called to him, something hidden in the very walls of the fortress he could sense, but couldn't quite grasp. One evening, after yet another restless night, Ahmed decided that he could no longer ignore the strange happenings. There had to be an explanation. So with determination in his heart, he set out for the fortress ruins that lay just beyond the guest house. The air was cool and crisp as the moon cast long shadows across the barren landscape. The fortress loomed in the distance, its ancient stones barely visible under the dark sky, standing like silent sentinels of the past. As he approached the ruins, the world around him seemed to grow quieter. The wind held its breath, the trees stood still. It was almost as if the entire world was waiting. He felt his heart beat faster, but the pull of curiosity was too strong. He stepped into the fortress, its stones cold beneath his feet. The silence was oppressive, but there was something more, something alive. He walked deeper into the ruins, each step echoing off the stone walls. Suddenly, a chill ran down his spine. He wasn't alone. Ahmed paused, his breath catching in his throat as he heard it. The faintest sound of something, someone, moving in the distance. He turned slowly, his eyes scanning the dark corridors. And then, there she was, standing before him, as if she had appeared from the very walls of the fortress itself, was a woman. Her beauty was otherworldly, pale skin that seemed to glow under the moonlight, dark hair cascading around her shoulders, and eyes that held an ancient sadness. She was dressed in a flowing white gown, almost ethereal, as though she didn't belong to this world at all. For a moment, Ahmed couldn't speak. His heart pounded in his chest. Who was this woman? Where had she come from? And why was she here? I am trapped, she said softly, her voice like a distant whisper. Yet it cut through the silence of the ruins with startling clarity. Trapped by a curse, and you are the one who can help me. The words hit him like a blow. A curse? Was she real, or was this just another trick of the mind, something conjured by the strange atmosphere of the fortress? But her eyes, those eyes, held such depth, such sorrow, that Ahmed couldn't bring himself to doubt her. He took a step closer, compelled by something he couldn't explain. How can I help you? Ahmed asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman whose name, she said, was Layla, began to tell him her story. She spoke of a time long ago, centuries before, when she had been a young woman, living in a nearby village. Layla had fallen in love with a Jinn, an entity from a world beyond human comprehension. Their love had been forbidden, their union a dangerous secret. But their love was strong, and for a time Layla had believed it would last forever. But fate, as it often does, was cruel. The villagers discovered her secret, and in a fit of rage and fear, they cursed her, condemning her to an eternity trapped within the fortress. Layla had been bound to these very walls, neither fully alive nor truly dead, condemned to wander the ruins for all eternity. I am cursed, Layla said, her voice growing distant as she spoke. I cannot leave, but you, Ahmed, you are the one who can free me. The weight of her words settled on him. Was this real? Could this beautiful woman really be trapped by a curse? And if so, how could he help her? The air around them seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment, and the moonlight grew dim, as if the fortress itself were listening to their conversation. Ahmed, feeling an overwhelming sense of empathy for her, promised that he would do whatever it took to free her. But as she gazed at him, her eyes deep with sorrow and longing, he couldn't help but wonder, was he truly helping her? Or was he simply falling deeper into a trap, one he didn't yet fully understand? As Layla's form shimmered in the moonlight, her soft voice filled the air once more. The curse can only be broken by one who truly understands the power of love. But be careful, Ahmed. There are things in this world, things that should not be touched. As the days wore on, Ahmed couldn't shake the feeling that he had become entangled in something far beyond his understanding. Layla's words echoed in his mind. You are the one who can help me. But each time he thought about it, doubt crept in, gnawing at his thoughts. Was this a simple curse? Or was there something more to Layla's story than she had let on? The fortress, which had once seemed so still and silent, now felt alive with secrets. Each room, each corridor seemed to pulse with energy, as if the stones themselves were watching, waiting. And then there were the whispers, soft, barely audible voices that seemed to drift from the cracks in the walls, murmuring in languages that were not of this world. But no matter how strange the surroundings became, one thing kept drawing Ahmed back to the fortress: Layla. He couldn't explain it, but a strange connection had formed between them, one that went beyond mere curiosity. There was something about her presence that pulled at his soul, something he couldn't resist. She was trapped, yes, but she was also beautiful in a way that transcended the human world. Her sadness, her longing, it all seemed to reach deep inside him and twist his heart. Every evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ahmed returned to the fortress, searching for a way to break Layla's curse. He combed through old books, seeking any clue that could unravel the mystery. Yet the more he searched, the more he realized the truth was elusive, slipping through his fingers like sand. Layla seemed to fade more each day. Her voice grew colder, and her once radiant form appeared more faded with every meeting. He began to notice the changes clearly now. Her beauty, once so captivating, was slowly draining away, her face becoming more gaunt, her eyes losing their luster. She no longer floated gracefully as she had when they first met. Now she seemed to drag her feet, her every movement weighed down by an invisible force. The vibrant energy that had once surrounded her was now gone, replaced by an oppressive sadness that seemed to fill the very air of the fortress. One evening, as Ahmed approached the crumbling stone archway where Layla often appeared, he found her standing still, her back to him. Her white gown fluttered in the cold breeze, but her posture was rigid, her head bowed low. For a moment she didn't speak. Ahmed stood there, unsure of what to say. The transformation was stark. This was not the same woman he had met only a few days ago. Her beauty had withered, her face now pale and hollow, her eyes distant. "Layla," he said softly, his voice full of concern. "What is happening to you?" She turned slowly to face him. Her eyes, once full of warmth and sorrow, now seemed cold, as though she were looking through him rather than at him. "You promised you would help me," she whispered, her voice devoid of emotion. "But you cannot help me, Ahmed. You cannot free me. No one can." Ahmed stepped forward, desperation creeping into his voice. But I have to try. I can't leave you like this." Layla's lips curved into a thin, sorrowful smile. "You don't understand," she replied. "The curse, it was never meant to be broken. I was never meant to be freed." Her words hit Ahmed like a blow. He took a step back, confusion and fear flooding his chest. "What do you mean? I thought you were trapped by a Jinn's curse. That's what you told me." Layla's form flickered for a moment, her figure wavering like a mirage in the moonlight. "That was a lie," she said, her voice now sharp and cold. "I was never cursed by a Jinn. I was cursed by my own heart." Ahmed blinked, struggling to make sense of her words. "What are you saying?" She stepped closer, her expression now dark and distant. "I fell in love with a Jinn centuries ago, but love between a human and a Jinn is a forbidden thing. When the village discovered my secret, the Jinn I loved was torn apart by their anger. And so, I was cursed, not by them, but by him. The curse was never to free me, Ahmed. It was to trap me here forever, to keep me bound to the walls of this fortress. Because in the end, the Jinn didn't want me to escape. He wanted me to suffer. He wanted me to understand the true cost of loving a creature from another world." The weight of her words struck Ahmed deeply, and for the first time, he felt the full horror of the situation. Layla had never been a simple victim of a curse. She had been bound here by her own choices, by a love that could never be. And now the curse wasn't to break it, it was to trap her forever, to ensure that she never escaped the agony of her own heart. Ahmed's mind raced. The connection he had felt, the strange pull between him and Layla, was beginning to make sense. It wasn't just sympathy or empathy, it was something more. She was trapped by love, and now he was beginning to see that he was being drawn into the same trap. "Why are you telling me this?" Ahmed asked, his voice trembling. "Why now?" Layla looked at him with a sad, knowing smile. "Because, Ahmed," she whispered, "you're the one who will take my place. The curse will now be yours." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, their meaning sinking into Ahmed's chest like a cold weight. "You're the one who will take my place." She had said it so calmly, so matter-of-factly, yet it felt like a death sentence. Ahmed's breath caught in his throat, his mind spinning. What had Layla meant by that? He had come here to help her, to free her from this torment. But now it seemed he had fallen into a trap of his own making. It wasn't a curse he could break with a few words or some old forgotten ritual. No, it was a fate far worse than he could have imagined. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, as though speaking louder would shatter the fragile reality he was clinging to. Layla's eyes, once filled with sorrow, now held a strange, knowing glint. "The Jinn who cursed me. He wasn't just a creature of darkness and fire. He was a creature of love and jealousy. And when the villagers condemned me, when they tore us apart, he did not simply leave me in peace. He bound me here, to this place, to this ruin. And he knew that one day someone like you would come, someone with a pure heart, someone who would feel sympathy for me, someone who would fall in love with me in a way that I could never love him." She stepped closer to him, her form flickering again, as though the walls themselves were trying to push her away. And so, the curse works. If you try to break it, if you truly believe you can save me, the curse will twist and claim you instead. You will become like me, trapped in this place, bound by a love that can never be returned. You will be bound to these walls for eternity. The air grew colder, and for the first time since he had arrived, Ahmed felt the full weight of the ancient fortress bearing down on him. The stones seemed to hum with energy, as if the entire place was alive, aware of the trap it had laid. His heart raced and his pulse quickened as the truth began to settle in his mind. But, but I can leave, Ahmed said, his voice shaky but determined. I can walk away. I don't have to stay here. I don't have to be part of this curse. Layla's gaze softened for a moment, but it was brief. No, you can't leave. Not anymore. Once you've heard the truth, once you've seen what you've seen, there's no going back. The curse has already claimed you. Her words were like ice, and for a moment Ahmed felt the full weight of their meaning. He could leave, yes, but not truly. Not without abandoning something he hadn't even realized he had given up. The very part of him that had cared for her, that had wanted to help her. And now it seemed that part of him was gone, consumed by the curse, just as Layla's love had been. You don't understand, she whispered, her voice trembling. The curse was never just about me. It was about love. It was about the cost of love between two beings from different worlds. You think you're helping me, but in truth, you've already become part of the curse. The Jinn knew it would happen. He knew someone like you, someone with a pure heart, would be drawn into this story. He knew you would be the one who would fall for me, who would try to save me, only to become trapped just like I was. Ahmed could feel the pull of her words, the truth of them sinking in deeper with every passing second. But even as it threatened to swallow him whole, something in him refused to give up. He couldn't accept that this was the end. He couldn't accept that his fate was sealed by the love of a creature he barely understood, a curse he hadn't even asked for. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to break free. With newfound resolve, he stepped back, shaking his head. Number I refuse to accept this. There must be another way. I don't care about this curse. I will find a way to break it, no matter what it takes. Layla's gaze darkened, her face hardening with a sorrowful yet resigned look. You don't understand, Ahmed. The curse doesn't care about your will. It doesn't care about your refusal. The moment you walked into this fortress, the moment you met me, you sealed your fate. You are no longer a stranger to this world. You are part of it now, just as I am. With a heavy sigh, Layla raised her hand toward him, and in that instant, the fortress seemed to come alive. The walls groaned, the air thickened, and a terrible pressure pressed down on Ahmed. The energy in the room seemed to shift, darkening, swirling like a storm about to break. And then, the truth hit him with the force of a thunderclap. The curse wasn't just about love, it was about time. The Jinn had not simply cursed Layla to live forever, trapped in the fortress. No, he had cursed both of them to be trapped in time itself, to live in an endless loop of suffering and longing. And once you entered this loop, there was no escape. Layla hadn't been trapped for centuries. She had been trapped for moments that stretched into eternity, and now Ahmed would experience it too. No, he cried out, taking a step back. But it was too late. The curse had already begun to take hold of him. The fortress seemed to close in, its walls shifting, distorting, and the air growing thick with ancient power. The world around him began to blur and fade, until the only thing that remained was Layla's cold, sad gaze. Now, Ahmed, she whispered softly, you will understand what it means to love something you cannot have. You will understand what it means to be bound by a curse that never ends. And with those final words, the world around Ahmed collapsed into darkness. Ahmed awoke to silence. For a moment he couldn't comprehend what had happened. The darkness that surrounded him felt suffocating, yet strangely familiar, as though he had been here before, or perhaps was meant to be here all along. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy, as though he was underwater, unable to break free from the pressure. The walls of the fortress seemed to close in around him, their jagged edges almost alive, watching him. The air was thick with something he couldn't name. Time itself seemed to bend, warp, and stretch in ways that defied logic. It was then that he remembered. The curse. Layla's words echoed in his mind. Now, you will understand what it means to love something you cannot have. You will understand what it means to be bound by a curse that never ends. As his thoughts began to clear, he realized with growing horror that the world around him was not the same as it had been before. The atmosphere was no longer a reflection of the outside world. No, it was something else. This was a place outside of time, a prison where moments repeated, yet always with a subtle twist. He was caught in an endless loop, a never-ending cycle where nothing changed, but everything shifted. Ahmed stood up slowly, his legs unsteady. His senses screamed at him that something was wrong, but he couldn't understand it fully. Was this death? Had the curse truly claimed him? He tried to call out, but his voice felt hollow, like it was swallowed by the very walls of the fortress. Suddenly there was movement at the far end of the hall. He turned quickly, and his heart skipped a beat. There, standing in the doorway, was Layla. Her form flickered in and out of focus, like a mirage. Her once beautiful face was now gaunt, her eyes dark and hollow, as though the years of her torment had finally caught up with her. But despite the hollowed look in her eyes, there was something else, something that wasn't quite right. "Layla!" Ahmed called out, his voice trembling. "What's happening? Why am I here? What is this place?" She looked at him, her lips curving into a sad smile. "This is it, Ahmed. This is where you belong now. This is where we are meant to be. Forever." The words hit him like a stone, his heart pounding in his chest. No, this can't be. This isn't real. I can't be trapped here. I won't be." Layla took a step closer, but she moved slowly, her eyes filled with a deep, mournful sadness. "It's real, Ahmed. You're here in this place, and now you'll live it over and over again. The same moment, the same pain. Forever." The reality of her words slowly began to settle into his mind, like cold water filling a glass. He tried to resist, tried to move, but it was no use. He was trapped, locked in this endless cycle of time, with no escape. The walls of the fortress seemed to close in around him, and the air grew heavier with each passing second. "But why?" Ahmed whispered. "Why me?" Layla's eyes darkened, and she stepped closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Because you were the one who came. You were the one who tried to help me. But no one can break this curse, Ahmed. Not you. Not anyone. You're just another soul caught in this web, another heart torn apart by love that can never be returned." Her voice trailed off, and Ahmed felt his chest tighten as her words hit him like a hammer. Love. It was always about love. The love that had trapped Layla, the love that had cursed her, and now the love that had claimed him. But even as the weight of it pressed down on him, something inside him refused to accept it. He couldn't give in. He wouldn't. "There has to be a way out," he muttered, more to himself than to her. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. "There has to be a way to break this curse. I won't live in this endless loop with you. I won't." Layla's expression softened, a flicker of something almost like pity in her eyes. "You think you can break it?" she asked, her voice tinged with both sadness and something darker. "You think you can escape what I couldn't? The curse is not something you can defeat, Ahmed. It's not something you can escape from. It's eternal." As she spoke, the walls of the fortress seemed to shudder, and a strange energy filled the air. Ahmed's mind raced, trying to process everything. What had he missed? What had he failed to see? And then it hit him, the truth that he had been too blind to see before. The curse was not just about the love between a human and a jinn. It wasn't even just about Layla or him. It was about time. It was about the unbreakable loop of desire, of longing, of being trapped in a place where the heart and mind could never be free. He understood now. The jinn had not just cursed them both to be trapped in a fortress. He had cursed them to be trapped in a cycle of despair, to live the same moments over and over again, never able to escape, always drawn back to the same point in time. But there was something else, something Layla hadn't told him. She had mentioned before that the curse could only be broken by someone who understood the power of love. But what if the key wasn't breaking the curse at all? What if the key was accepting it, surrendering to it? Ahmed took a deep breath, his mind clearing for the first time since he had arrived in the fortress. He looked at Layla, and for the first time, he truly saw her. Not as the woman he had tried to save, but as someone who had been consumed by the curse just as much as he had. "I understand now," he whispered, his voice steady. "I can't break the curse, Layla. I can't escape it. But I can accept it. I can live it. And in doing so, maybe I can free us both." Layla's eyes widened in disbelief, and for the first time in centuries she seemed to smile, genuinely. "You understand," she said softly. "You finally understand." The fortress around them seemed to shift, the walls creaking and groaning as though the entire structure was holding its breath. Ahmed stood there staring at Layla, his heart racing, but this time it wasn't out of fear. It was out of something new, something he couldn't quite place yet, but it felt like understanding. Layla, for the first time since they met, looked less like a ghost and more like a human. Her form flickered less, and the sorrow in her eyes began to fade, replaced by something like hope. Her smile, though still tinged with sadness, was warmer, more genuine than it had been. "You understand, Ahmed," Layla whispered, her voice trembling. "But the curse is more than just time. It's about love. It's about how love binds us in ways we can never escape. That's why it can't be broken by force. It can't be broken by anger or hatred, only by acceptance." Ahmed felt the weight of her words. He had spent so long searching for a way to break the curse, to fight against it. But he now realized that it was not something to conquer. It was something to endure. He had to accept the pain, the longing, the loss. He had to surrender to the curse, not because he was weak, but because it was the only way to set them both free. He stepped forward, his voice calm but determined. "I accept it. I accept the curse. I accept everything that comes with it, even if it means I will be trapped here forever." Layla's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. She stepped back, disbelief filling her face. "No, Ahmed, you don't understand. By accepting it, you will lose yourself. You will become part of this curse, just as I did. You will be trapped in this endless loop with me, never able to escape, never able to find peace." But Ahmed's gaze did not falter. "I won't lose myself. I won't lose who I am. I accept this curse because I know that love, even in its most painful form, is worth experiencing. Even if it means I will never escape this place, I will carry this love with me. And maybe that's enough." Layla looked at him, her expression softening, and for a moment the air around them seemed to still. The energy that had crackled and swirled around them for so long began to quiet, as though the very foundation of the fortress was listening to his words, absorbing them into its walls. And then something impossible happened. The air around them shimmered, and the fortress seemed to change. The cold, oppressive feeling that had filled the air began to dissipate, replaced by a warmth that made Ahmed's heart swell with an emotion he couldn't fully describe. It wasn't joy, but something deeper, something more profound. For the first time since he had arrived in the fortress, Ahmed felt free, not from the curse, not from the walls that surrounded him, but from the fear that had held him captive, the fear of losing himself, the fear of being trapped forever. He had accepted the curse, and in doing so he had found a kind of freedom, one that wasn't tied to time or place. Layla, too, seemed to feel it. Her form began to solidify, her once ethereal figure becoming more grounded, more human. She stepped toward him, her eyes filled with gratitude and something else, something like peace. "You've done it," she said softly, her voice full of wonder. "You've broken the curse not by force but by love. You've shown me that there's more to this curse than just suffering. You've shown me that even in the darkest places, love can still shine." Ahmed smiled, feeling the weight of her words settle into his chest. I haven't broken the curse, Layla. I've just accepted it. I've accepted that we can't change the past, but we can choose how to live with it. With those words, the air around them shifted again, the fortress groaning as if it were coming alive. The walls seemed to breathe, exhaling the pain and sorrow that had filled them for centuries. The ground beneath their feet felt solid, no longer shifting and unstable, and the darkness that had once surrounded them began to recede, giving way to light. Thank you, Layla whispered, her voice full of gratitude. You've freed me, Ahmed. You've freed us both. And with those final words, Layla's form began to fade, her figure dissolving into the light. Ahmed reached out, but she was already gone, leaving only the soft echo of her voice in the air. The curse had ended, not with a violent break, but with a quiet surrender. And in that surrender, something beautiful had been born. Ahmed stood alone in the fortress, but this time, he didn't feel the crushing weight of the curse. He didn't feel trapped. He felt free. He turned toward the exit of the fortress, and as he stepped out into the light of the setting sun, the world seemed to open up before him. The walls, the curse, the endless loop, they were all gone. He had broken free, not by fighting against the curse, but by embracing it, by accepting it as part of his journey. And in doing so, he had found the peace he had been seeking all along. The story of the Jinn woman, the haunted fortress, and the curse that bound them both had come to an end. But for Ahmed, it was just the beginning of a new chapter. Thank you for watching, and if you like strange and exciting stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the alert bell to get everything that is out of the ordinary. If you have experiences or opinions, share them with us in the comments. Always be ready for the unexpected and buy in the next story, if you dare to hear it.